There's a food sitting in almost every kitchen in America that could be the real reason you're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning. Stay until the end, because I'm going to name it. Not stress. Not bladder. Not just getting older. A food. Something so ordinary you'd never suspect it. Something you've probably eaten 100 times this year without a second thought. And once I tell you what it is, I think a lot of you are going to sit back and say, that explains everything. What if the tired, foggy, heavy feeling you've quietly accepted as part of aging isn't aging at all? What if it's simply your body reacting, night after night, to something you ate a few hours before bed? For more than 20 years, I've sat across from men and women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who all describe some version of the exact same story. They fall asleep just fine. Then, like clockwork, their eyes snap open in the middle of the night, and no matter how exhausted they are, sleep refuses to come back. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this food is, why it hits older bodies so differently than younger ones, and the simple, free changes that helped hundreds of my patients finally sleep through the night again. Before we go further, if you care about staying sharp, independent, and full of energy as you age, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep making content like this for you and the people you love. And once you hear what today's food is, tell me in the comments if you eat it in the evening too, because I suspect a lot of you will be surprised. Let's start with why sleep becomes so fragile after 60 in the first place, because understanding this makes everything else click into place. As we age, the body produces less melatonin, the hormone that signals to your brain that it's time to power down for the night. At the same time, something called sleep architecture changes, the technical term for how your body cycles through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep across the night. In younger adults, these cycles are long and sturdy. In older adults, they become shorter and more fragile, which means it takes far less to knock you out of a deep sleep cycle and back into a light one where you're far more likely to wake up. Picture a house with old, worn-out door hinges. When you're young, those doors are solid. A little noise, a little light, a little discomfort, none of it wakes you. But as the hinges wear down, even a small breeze can swing that door wide open. Your sleep, the same way. It no longer takes much to disturb it. And that's exactly why what you eat in the evening starts to matter far more than it used to. Now, about the food itself. Picture your evening meal. Maybe it's dinner with your spouse, maybe a quiet plate in front of the television, maybe a small snack before bed because you get hungry earlier than you used to. Somewhere in that evening routine, for an enormous number of older adults, sits a food that seems completely harmless. It's not candy. It's not fried food. It's tomatoes and tomato-based dishes eaten late in the evening. Pasta with marinara sauce, pizza tomato soup, or a big salad loaded with fresh tomatoes right before bed. Now, before anyone panics, I want to be clear. Tomatoes are wonderful. They're packed with nutrients, they support heart health, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying them earlier in the day. The problem, the tomato. The problem is timing, and the problem is how your digestive system quietly changes as you get older. Here's what's happening underneath the surface. Tomatoes are naturally high in acidity. A younger digestive system processes that acidity quickly, and most people never notice a thing. But after 60, the muscles in your esophagus and the valve that keeps stomach acid where it belongs, called the lower esophageal sphincter, naturally begin to weaken. This is simply part of aging, the same way joints get a little stiffer or eyesight gets a little less sharp. When that valve weakens, lying down after a tomato-heavy meal makes it far easier for stomach acid to creep back up into the esophagus. Most people never feel a dramatic burning sensation. Instead, they feel something far more subtle, restless, unsettled sleep. They wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning with a strange tightness in the chest, a faintly sour taste, or simply an inability to drift back off, never once connecting it to what they ate hours earlier. I remember a woman named Carol, 68, a retired school administrator, who came to see me convinced she had developed some kind of serious sleep disorder. She told me she'd wake up almost every night between 1 and 3 a.m., wide awake, heart pounding slightly, and it would take nearly 2 hours to fall back asleep. She'd tried melatonin, a white noise machine, and had even considered asking her doctor for sleeping pills. When I asked her to walk me through a typical evening, she mentioned, almost in passing, that she loved a big bowl of pasta with marinara sauce 3 or 4 nights a week, usually finishing dinner around 7:30 and heading to bed by 9:30. 2 hours felt like plenty of time to her. But for someone with a naturally weakening esophageal valve, 2 hours often isn't enough for tomato acidity to fully clear the stomach before lying flat. I suggested one simple experiment. Keep the pasta, keep the marinara, but move dinner earlier when possible. And on nights that wasn't possible, swap the tomato sauce for a lighter olive oil and herb version instead. Nothing changed. No new medication, no new supplement, just that one shift. When Carol returned a month later, she looked like a different person. She'd only woken in the middle of the night twice in 3 weeks, compared to almost every single night before. In a survey of over 400 older adults who adjusted the timing of acidic evening meals in a similar way, nearly 78% reported fewer nighttime awakenings within just 3 weeks, and more than 65% said their morning energy noticeably improved. These aren't guarantees, everybody is different, but the pattern is remarkably consistent, and Carol's story is far from rare. Now here's something I want you to really sit with for a second, because it surprised even me the first time I saw the research. Tomatoes aren't the only late evening trigger. Citrus fruits like oranges and grapefruit carry similar acidity that can cause the same quiet disruption. Spicy foods, even in small amounts, can irritate a digestive system that's already working a bit slower than it used to. And onions and garlic, wonderful as they are for heart health, are also known to relax that same esophageal valve, making it even easier for acid to travel upward once you're lying down. None of these foods, enemies. They're simply foods that deserve more respect for timing once you cross into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important part of this entire video, so keep watching, because it changes how you should think about your entire evening, not just what's on your plate. That missing piece is this: it was never really about the tomato. It's about what happens the moment you lie down. Digestion isn't just chemistry, it's also physics, and gravity is either working with you or against you depending on your body's position. This is why two people can eat the exact same tomato-based dinner at the exact same time, and one sleeps fine while the other wakes up at 2 a.m. The difference often comes down to what they did in the hour after eating, and how their body was positioned once they finally climbed into bed. Once you understand that, the solution stops being about giving up foods you love and starts being about working smarter with your evening routine. Let me explain why this matters so much more than most people realize, because disrupted sleep isn't just about feeling tired the next day. When your sleep gets interrupted in the middle of the night, you're often pulled out of deep sleep, the very stage where your body does its most important overnight repair work. This is when your immune system strengthens, when your brain clears away waste products that build up during waking hours, and when your cardiovascular system gets its most meaningful rest. Interrupt that stage repeatedly, night after night, and the effects add up in ways that go far beyond simple tiredness. Sleep researchers have consistently linked fragmented sleep in older adults with a higher risk of memory difficulties, mood changes, and challenges with blood sugar regulation over time. One bad night won't harm you, but a pattern, repeated month after month, quietly chips away at the foundation your body needs to stay healthy and independent. Let me tell you about Frank, 74, a retired mechanic who came to see me not because of sleep, but because his wife was worried about how forgetful he'd become. He was misplacing his keys constantly, forgetting appointments, losing his train of thought mid-conversation. Frank himself brushed it off as normal aging, but when we looked at his sleep, a familiar story appeared. He was a night owl who loved spicy food, and his favorite evening ritual was a bowl of chili with extra hot sauce around 8:30, followed by bed around 10. He too was waking up multiple times a night without ever realizing why. We made change. He kept his beloved chili, but moved it to lunchtime and swapped his evening meal for something gentler, simple grilled chicken with steamed vegetables. Within a few weeks, Frank's wife said he seemed sharper, more present in conversation, and was remembering things he used to forget. Frank said it felt like a fog had lifted that he hadn't even realized was there. I want to pause here and say something important, because I don't want anyone watching this to feel alarmed or think they need to give up foods they love. This isn't restriction. It's about awareness and timing. Your body at 65, 70, or 80 simply processes things differently than it did at 30, and working with that reality instead of fighting it is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself. So let's talk about what actually helps, because understanding the problem is only useful when it's paired with a solution you can start using tonight. The first habit is what I call the 3-hour rule. Try to finish your last substantial meal at least 3 hours before you plan to lie down. This gives your digestive system enough time to move food out of the stomach and reduces the chance that acid has anywhere to travel once you're horizontal. If dinner is your biggest meal and moving it earlier feels difficult, consider making it lighter and saving heartier, tomato-rich or spicier dishes for lunchtime instead, when your body has all afternoon and evening to fully process them. The second habit is choosing gentler evening options on nights you do eat closer to bedtime. Instead of pasta with marinara, try a simple grain like rice or quinoa with steamed vegetables and a mild protein. Instead of a citrus dessert, reach for a small handful of nuts or a few slices of banana, naturally gentle on digestion and even containing small amounts of compounds that support your body's own melatonin production. Instead of a spicy stir-fry, save the heat for lunch and choose something mild in the evening, like a simple vegetable soup without a tomato base. The third habit involves your sleeping position, and it surprises people because it seems unrelated to food, but it's deeply connected. If you know you've eaten a bit later than usual, try elevating the head of your bed slightly, even just a few inches, using a wedge pillow or extra pillows. Gravity is a powerful, free tool. Keeping your upper body slightly elevated makes it significantly harder for stomach acid to travel upward, even if there's a bit more of it than usual working through your system. The fourth habit is one of the most overlooked, and it's a short walk after dinner. Just 10 to 15 minutes of gentle walking after your evening meal can meaningfully speed up digestion and help move food through your stomach more efficiently, reducing how long acid sits before you lie down. You don't need walk around the block. A slow, relaxed stroll around the living room, the yard, or down the hallway and back is enough to make a real difference. The fifth habit is paying attention to your own personal patterns. Because everyone's body responds a little differently, I always encourage patients to keep a simple notebook by their bed for 1 or 2 weeks. Each morning, jot down what you ate the night before and how you slept, whether you woke up, how many times, and how you felt in the morning. Within a week or two, patterns almost always emerge. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's citrus or onions or a particular spice. Maybe it's something else entirely unique to your own body. The goal isn't to memorize a list of forbidden foods someone else handed you. The goal is to become the expert on your own body, because nobody knows it better than you do. I've had patients discover it wasn't tomatoes at all for them, but a late-night bowl of ice cream, or a habit of snacking on crackers directly in bed. The notebook doesn't lie, and after a week or two, most people are genuinely surprised by what it reveals. If you experience frequent nighttime waking along with a persistent burning sensation in your chest, a sour taste in your mouth, or a chronic cough that worsens at night, it's worth having a conversation with your doctor, since these can sometimes point to a condition called acid reflux or GERD that may benefit from medical guidance beyond simple dietary timing. What we're discussing today is about gentle, everyday adjustments that help many people feel noticeably better, but it's never a replacement for a conversation with your healthcare provider, especially if symptoms feel severe or persistent. There's a sixth habit I want to add, one that rarely gets mentioned, and that's paying attention to what you drink in the evening, not just what you eat. Many older adults switch from coffee to something they assume is completely harmless, like a glass of wine before bed, or a cup of citrus-flavored tea. Alcohol has a strange, almost deceptive relationship with sleep. It can make you feel drowsy and help you fall asleep faster, but as your body metabolizes it over the next few hours, it actually fragments sleep and relaxes that same esophageal valve we've been talking about all along, making acid reflux more likely in the second half of the night. This is why so many people who have a nightcap fall asleep quickly, but wake up wide awake at 2 or 3 in the morning, convinced something else must be wrong. And citrus-flavored teas, however soothing they sound, carry the same acidity concern as eating an orange right before bed. A far gentler evening drink is something like warm water with a small amount of chamomile, or plain warm water on its own. It sounds almost too simple to matter, But for many of my patients, swapping an evening glass of wine or a citrus tea for something neutral was one of the biggest changes in how deeply they slept. I also want to address a question I hear constantly, which is whether it's the acidity itself causing the problem, or something else entirely called histamine. This is a bit more technical, but stick with me, because it explains why some people react strongly to these foods while others barely notice anything at all. Tomatoes, aged cheeses, fermented foods, and certain wines are naturally higher in a compound called histamine. As we age, the enzyme responsible for breaking down histamine in the body tends to become a little less efficient. For most people, this goes completely unnoticed. But for a smaller group, especially those who already deal with seasonal allergies or sensitive skin, eating high histamine foods in the evening can lead to a kind of low-grade internal restlessness, a racing heart, warm, flushed skin, or a wired, can't-settle-down feeling as they're trying to fall asleep. If you've ever eaten a big Italian dinner and then felt strangely alert and unable to wind down despite being exhausted, this could be part of the explanation. The good news is that the same solution applies either way. Earlier meals, gentler evening choices, and giving your body more time before lying down all help, regardless of whether the culprit is acidity, histamine, or a combination of both. Let me walk you through what a realistic, sustainable evening might actually look like, because I don't want this to feel like a list of rules you have to follow perfectly. Imagine dinner around 6 p.m. instead of 8. A simple plate, some protein, some vegetables, a gentle grain, nothing drowning in tomato sauce or citrus dressing. Around 6:45, a short, unhurried walk, just enough to help digestion along, maybe with your spouse, a neighbor, or even just a slow lap around the house if the weather isn't cooperating. By 8 or 8:30, the lights start dimming, the television volume comes down, and if you're someone who enjoys an evening snack, it's something small and gentle, a few crackers, a small handful of almonds, maybe a banana. By 9 or 9:30, you're winding down for bed, and if you know dinner ran a little later than usual that particular night, an extra pillow or a wedge under the mattress gives gravity a helping hand. None of this requires a stopwatch or perfect discipline. It's simply a rhythm, and rhythms become easier the more consistently you follow them, night after night, until they stop feeling like effort and start feeling like habit. I want to be honest with you about something else too. Not every single case of middle-of-the-night waking comes down to food. Some of it is genuinely connected to hormonal shifts, medication side effects, an overactive bladder, or underlying health conditions that deserve a doctor's attention. What I'm sharing today isn't meant to replace medical care, and if you've tried adjusting your evening meals and you're still struggling significantly, please don't hesitate to bring it up with your physician. But in my 2 decades of practice, I can tell you that evening food timing is one of the most under-discussed, most overlooked, and most easily fixable pieces of this puzzle, and it's often the very first thing worth trying, simply because it costs nothing and takes only a few days to start revealing whether it makes a difference for you. Let's step back for a moment, because it's easy to get lost in the details of tomatoes and timing and forget the real point of all this. The real point is that you deserve to wake up feeling rested. You deserve mornings where your mind feels clear instead of foggy, where you have the energy to take a walk, call a friend, work in the garden, or simply enjoy your coffee without dragging yourself through the first few hours of the day. For years, broken sleep has been quietly written off as an unavoidable part of getting older, something you're simply supposed to accept. But what Carol discovered, and what Frank discovered, and what so many others have discovered, is that a huge piece of the puzzle was sitting right there on their dinner plate the entire time, invisible until someone finally pointed it out. I want to share one more story before we wrap up, because it captures why this topic matters so deeply to me. A woman named Diane, 71, came to see me after her daughter practically insisted on it. Diane had become withdrawn, less interested in seeing friends, less patient with her grandchildren, and her daughter worried something serious was happening emotionally. When we talked, it became clear Diane simply hadn't slept well in years. She'd wake multiple times a night, feel foggy and irritable all day, and had quietly resigned herself to thinking this was just who she was now. Her evenings involved a beloved tradition, a big glass of orange juice and a bowl of mixed citrus fruit while watching her favorite shows before bed, a ritual she'd kept for over a decade. We didn't ask to give it up. We simply moved it earlier in the day, replacing her evening snack with something gentler, a small bowl of oatmeal or a few crackers with a mild spread. Within a month, Diane's daughter called to thank me, not because Diane had transformed overnight, but because she sounded like herself again, patient, warm, and present, simply because she was finally sleeping through the night. These stories matter because they remind us small changes ripple outward into every part of life: our relationships, our patience, our memory, our mood, and our physical health. Sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's the foundation everything else in your day is built on top of. And the beautiful thing about what we've covered today is that it doesn't require expensive supplements, complicated routines, or giving up the foods and traditions you love. It simply requires a little awareness about timing and a willingness to gently experiment with your own evening routine. So here's what I'd love for you to try tonight or tomorrow evening. Think back over the last week and ask yourself honestly whether tomatoes, citrus, onions, garlic, or spicy food tend to show up in your dinners or evening snacks. If they do, try shifting them earlier in the day for the next week or two and see what happens. Try the 3-hour rule between your last meal and bedtime. Try a short walk after dinner. Try keeping that simple by your bed. None of these changes need to happen all at once. Even picking just one and sticking with it for a couple of weeks can start to reveal whether this is part of your own personal puzzle. Growing older brings real changes to how our bodies work. There's no denying that. But so many of those changes come with simple, gentle solutions once we understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. Poor sleep after 60 isn't a life sentence, and it isn't something you simply have to accept as the new normal. Often, it's your body sending you a quiet, patient signal, one that's been trying to get your attention for years, just waiting for you to finally notice what it's been telling you all along. I think about how many years Carol spent believing she simply had bad sleep genes. I think about how close Frank came to being told his forgetfulness was an early sign of something far more serious, when really his brain was just exhausted from being woken up 4 or 5 times every single night without him ever realizing it. I think about Diane, who nearly lost her closeness with her own grandchildren because she'd become someone she didn't recognize, tired and short-tempered, simply because her body never got the deep, uninterrupted rest it needed to reset. None of these people, a miracle. They needed information, the kind that usually doesn't make it into a 10-minute doctor's appointment, the kind that gets buried under bigger, scarier-sounding diagnoses. That's exactly why I wanted to make this video. Because sometimes the answer isn't complicated at all. Sometimes it's sitting quietly on your dinner plate, 3 hours before bedtime, waiting for someone to finally connect the dots. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today, it's this: you know your body better than any test, any specialist, or any video ever could. All the information in the world doesn't mean much until you actually pay attention to how your own body responds. So tonight, instead of asking yourself why you can't sleep the way you used to, try asking a gentler, more useful question. What did I eat this evening, and when? Give yourself permission to experiment, to notice, to adjust. You might be one small dinner change away from the kind of deep, restorative sleep you thought you'd left behind years ago. If today's video helped you see your evening routine in a new light, I'd really appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so we can keep bringing you practical, everyday health information designed specifically for this stage of life. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, does your evening routine include tomatoes, citrus, or spicy food close to bedtime? I have a feeling a lot of people watching this are nodding along right now. If you know a parent, a spouse, a friend, or a neighbor who struggles with restless nights, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes the smallest piece of information, something as simple as moving dinner an hour earlier, can be the beginning of the kind of deep, restorative sleep they thought they'd lost for good. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope tonight brings you a peaceful evening, a restful night, and a bright, clear morning ahead.